Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first episode of a new rock podcast entitled For Those About to Pod, We Salute You. My name is Brian Maley, and with my co-host Matt Rogers, we're going to be talking for about an hour on the major news, new releases, reissues in the world of rock today. So let me introduce to you my co-pilot for this evening's first show, Mr. Matt Rogers. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you.
It's been an interesting week.
It has. It's been a sad week, actually. It's been, the news that losing the legend was Eddie Van Halen. Yeah, sad times. I looked through a lot of the tributes on Facebook, and I have to say, and I'm not afraid to say this, and ashamed to say this, I had a tear or two. People like Steve Vai and others, Sammy Hagar, lots of others said some really poignant things, and of course, what Wolfgang Van Halen said about his dad was very emotive. So it's sad times. What did you think, Brian?
Yeah, I was the same. For me, I was. You always think about Eddie Van Halen and where he is amongst the pantheon of great rock guitar players, and usually in all of the polls, straight away everybody talks about Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, Ritchie Blackmore, Tony Iommi, and when it hit me, genuinely, the news, probably the best way I could describe it was Jimi Hendrix just took rock guitar in the late 60s, blew everybody away, and I think we had to wait till Eddie came along.
Yeah.
And I think just the crossover, we'll probably, I'd be interested to know where you got to hear Van Halen from, because for me, when I heard 1980, when I heard Jump the single, which is probably, whenever that released, that was a pop song. And then it's all the choruses and stuff. And then you just hear this wild guitar solo with this smiling guy doing the tapping in the fingers. And you're going, where the hell does that come from? And then he's just done Beat It with Michael Jackson as a favor for Quincy Jones. So it was a really, really sad day. And as you say, the tributes from great guitar players like Brian May, Noonan Bettencourt, everybody, so yeah. Where does he sit for you amongst he's probably top 5 for me guitar players.
Yeah, I would say so. Certainly, absolutely. And it's going back to what you said about guitarists that have kind of moved the needle, as it were. Certainly, you could maybe sort of think back to Les Paul, but not before our time. Jimi Hendrix. I would possibly put Tony Iommi in there for a different reason, because obviously he kind of created the sound. But then certainly Eddie Van Halen has created a kind of a style. That tapping technique. I know he didn't invent it necessarily, but he certainly mastered it, and has been, he really kind of created that as a way of kind of accentuating and elaborating on the kind of standard guitar solo. So, yeah, certainly, top 3, maybe even, an absolute hero. And like you said, he always, at least in the videos we watched and some of the live footage, always looked like he was enjoying himself.
Yes.
And I think he enjoyed, obviously, like the rest of the band, enjoyed the lifestyle, let's say. And I suppose in a way that was his demise. He'd been battling cancer, I believe, since 2001, which is 19 years ago now. And, he was a big smoker, and apparently the metal picks that he used created the tongue cancer he had. And so I'm not sure if that's true or not. But, it's sad, really, And it's too many of our heroes going. We've had Neil Peart this year, and Pete Way, and Paul Chapman, and obviously now Eddie Van Halen, others along the way, Lee Kerslake, and so on. It's I guess we're getting to that kind of tipping point. in when I get to like late 60s, even 70s. Where did I start? I mean, I started Van Halen probably about 1980. My start. I'm a bit older than you, Brian, as you know.
I can imagine this will be a theme over the weeks and months to come.
Maybe. But certainly around the time of Women and Children First, that album was out in 1980, and then really, obviously, then I kind of went backwards and to the first album, which still I think is one of the greatest debut albums ever.
Yeah, I would agree.
Absolutely fantastic songs on that album. Yeah. My personal favorite, I mean, Running with the Devil, and then that run from Eruption through to You Really Got Me, and then Ice Cream Man. What a song that is. A great bluesy song. So I mean, sad loss. How about you, Brian? You said you were.
Yeah, I was
1984.
Yeah, it was. Two things for it was kind of the advent of MTV. So I remember watching, obviously, Top of the Pops. I'm not quite sure. Did Jump go to number one, or certainly top 10 in the UK? I'm not sure if it was a number one single.
I think it probably went, certainly top 10 in the UK.
So I remember watching it in the videos, and obviously, for me that was the iconic moment. But then I was lucky enough on Irish television. They did. They showed the Metal Day. It was like 3 or 4 hours of the US Festival from 1983.
Oh, yeah.
Which introduced me. So the bill, I always remember the Metal Day bill was Quiet Riot.
Yeah.
It had Ozzy. Ozzy was on, which was iconically the first live show of Jakey Lee after Randy had passed away.
Okay.
Triumph.
Yeah,
and we'll talk about Triumph similarities maybe later. So I got to hear Triumph. Never heard of that band before. You then got onto the Judas Priest in 1983, Scorpions, and then headlining that night was Van Halen. And just as you say, Running with the Devil is like that iconic opener. They opened up their US Festival show with Running with the Devil, and they only showed maybe on Irish television like a 20-minute segment, but you got Running with the Devil. You Really Got Me. I think Ian Talking About Love was on it, and then they segued it where I'm not quite sure which album it's on, and maybe Van Halen 2 or the third album, where they did Happy Trails, as like a 4-piece barbershop. So they walked out, the 4 of them, and I think
Diver Down. I think that's on.
Is it Diver Down? And you've got 4. I
think so.
Yeah, you've got 4 guys in front of hundreds of thousands of people going, "Happy Trails to you," and Alex Van Halen's going, "Bum ba doo doo dum ba," and I'm kind of going, and and there's David E. Roth in a pair of leather chaps with no backside in them, and you're going, you can do vaudeville. And you can then rock out, and that was me. That was me hooked with Van Halen. I would say, and it'd be interesting as we with the parting of the ways with David Lee Roth in '84. You had you then had Van Halen, Van Hagar, and then you went into the David Lee Roth band, and I'd be interested where you sat, or where between sort of 85 and let's say 1990, whose lights shone brighter for you during that, or the material was more interesting to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. First of all, Jump got to number 7 in the UK charts.
All right, thank you.
I just checked, which is pretty good when you think about it. I'm actually happy with both versions of. I say both. There were technically 3 versions of Van Halen. Obviously, if you count the Gary Cherone period, which we won't.
It is a period.
It was a short-lived period, all the same.
I bought the album. I bought it.
Did you?
I've got Van Halen 3.
I like this. I like both, to be honest with you, for different reasons. I mean, the Van Halen 1 the David Lee Roth era was, groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Had showmanship, had vaudeville. It had all sorts really. As you say, you had Happy Trails, and then you had Panama, and you had Hot for Teacher, and then the Ice Cream Man, and so on. I mean, it was what it was. It was a lot of fun. It was fantastic musicianship. Yeah. But the musicianship, I think, went to another level when Sammy Hagar joined, because obviously I think he always gave me the impression he was a bit more professional. And I mean that in a kind of, he wasn't quite as vaudeville, quite the showman as Roth is, or was, he is. I mean, for example, I really like the For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge album.
I love it.
Which has got a couple of great, so I've got Pound Cake on there, and Top of the World, and so on. I mean, they did some great stuff with him. Obviously, the Right Now era was great. That song is great, and so on. So I'm I'm good with both. I don't know much about the Gary Cherone period, to be honest. I love Gary Cherone as a singer, entertainer, performer, so I'm sure it was okay.
Yeah, I didn't. It's one of these things where I love David Lee Roth. I as a singer, I think Sammy Hagar is incomparable. You and I have both seen Sammy with Chickenfoot, and for a guy who's in his 70s and still knocking it out of the park as a vocalist, even in his solo material, all the Montreux stuff, as a singer, Sammy Hagar is amazing. I didn't like the 5150 album. That first track. I remember going and buying I remember getting the CD, and the first track, which is it called Get Up or Get Off, and it's the opening track is the opening words that Sammy goes when he goes, "Hello, baby." And I'm like going, Sammy didn't need to do that. That's a Daveism, which Sammy didn't need to do. And yet you listen to so that first minute of that album was just, I just went, I can't listen to that. That's Sammy trying to be Dave.
Oh, really?
And it wasn't until years later. OU812 is an amazing album. It's got Finish What You Started. I love that album, and it's just an amazing album. I love it. OU812 is a brilliant album. But I went Big Roth. The Eat 'Em and Smile album with Vi, Billy Sheehan, Greg Bissonette. You look at Yankee Rose, Tobacco Roads, Ladies' Night in Buffalo, Going Crazy. That, to me, as an album, that is one of, you said it earlier, Van Halen 1 is probably one of the best debut albums of any band.
Yeah.
I think David Lee Roth set out with Eat 'Em and Smile really strong, with a strong band, followed it up with Skyscraper, and then after that it was kind of like
went a bit south after that, didn't it?
Yeah, so I kind of jumped. I kind of
no pun intended.
Yeah, but I bailed on Dave after Skyscraper, and then was Team Hagar, and have been ever since.
And why not? Yeah, as you say, his music, and when he has stood the test of time, really well. So talking of standing the test of time. Beautiful segue there.
Yes, so
yes. What do we think about the new ACDC song, and indeed the prospect of a new album? See what I did there?
You did. Mm-hmm. Bit of a shot in the dark.
Firstly, have you heard "Shot in the Dark"?
I have.
It's not a bit like the Aussie version. It's completely different.
This is the first new material from ACDC since rock. Since 2004, Rock or Bust, and you just
it's not. It's since then. 2008 was Black Ice. It must be 2000.
2014 was
was it 14?
2014,
Sorry,
6 years. Yeah, no. Right. 2014 was Rock or Bust. So 6 years.
Wow, that long ago.
It is. I know. Obviously. So when I think of the singles, like when you go back to the last three albums, I've got high hopes for Power Up. I really do, because Rock or Bust, when I think of the singles, when I think of the single that led off Rock or Bust, which was Play Ball, now I think Play Ball's just about 2 minutes, but I love that. It's a great single. And Shot in the Dark, again, it's a really bluesy mid-temp. You know, it's AC/DC. It just is AC/DC. It's just what we need right now.
Yeah, no, I would tend to agree. It's certainly not anything, you know, they haven't kind of thrown away the model and started afresh and become Jethro Tull or Yes or someone.
I'm just surprised Mike Portnoy's not drumming for them, because he's, you know, he's drumming for everybody else.
Yeah, that's true. No, I like the fact they've got as much of let's say the Back in Black lineup, which is to some people the classic lineup. I'm quite pleased they've got that back, and I think in a way, and I think, you know, you and I, you know, our friends have talked about this ad nauseum when all the kind of rumors started and so on a couple of years ago, that this would be some sort of, I mean, knowing AC/DC, it probably won't be, but, you know, it feels that it's one last hurrah. It's a kind of a homage to well, everything's gone before, but obviously Malcolm Young having passed away in 2017. You know, I think everyone wants it to be good, and if it's, I mean, I didn't really like Rock or Bust that much, but I like Black Ice, so hopefully it's more Black Ice than Rock or Bust.
I'd agree.
But we'll see. Yeah. I think it's out on November the 20th, something like that.
Yeah.
Just in time for Christmas, obviously, which is nice. Good timing. So I shall be asking Father Christmas to get me that. Yes. Obviously.
Well, and as I say, no, and I think having, I think as you said, you know, Angus has already come out in the press and said that this is a fitting tribute to Malcolm, and I think a lot of the material, I think Malcolm's actually credited in all 12 tracks, so a lot of the material, you know, it sounds that even though the band have only put out, you know, 3 albums in the last 15 years, etc., there's been a lot of material that's been in the can, and I think what I like about AC/DC in the last 20 years is it's pretty much the same band that's recorded all of the material. This is the 3rd album with Brendan O'Brien. Brendan O'Brien, as you say, I thought Black Ice was such a great album to come back on. You know, Rock and Roll Train's you know, I remember when we went to see them live. It's just a good track, and there's even just War Machine. Black Ice is a good, strong album. It's not up there with Highway to Hell or Back in Black, but it's a good AC. You'll pay your $12, or you know, for that.
Oh, I was thinking more like $9.99, but I know what you mean.
In Best Buy,
in Amazon, or Woolworths, something like that.
Exactly.
I am looking forward to it. There seems to be a dearth of new stuff lately. I think a lot of artists are delaying putting stuff out. Although there are some new things coming out, but I mean, for example, the Thunder album. Thunder have got an album done, which they're waiting to put out next year, presumably so they can tour it. And I think that's the key thing, isn't it? You know, trying to get that out. That said, there are some new albums out at the moment, which I'm, you know, looking forward to. But by the same token, I think I was thinking about it today. There are a lot of, you know, 40 years, 50 years, obviously a big landmark, but there's quite a few. There's quite a few big reissues coming out.
Okay,
which is nice. For example, and I'll give you an example. That's 40 years. Since a lot of things actually, but two that caught my eye. One for obvious reasons, and I'll come to that in a minute. But 40 years since Ace of Spades was released.
Oh, I didn't think you were going there. I was thinking about another band, but
don't worry, I'm going to go there as well. And so we've got 40, and I'm looking forward to that. I mean, there's some good live material apparently with that, and it's going to be interesting. I think it's remixed, remastered. There's demos, there's kind of rarities with that whole kind of Ace of Spades package. And I think if you're going to do a reissue and a remastered, then throw in some additional stuff. By the same token, or slightly different, there is sounds like we're doing a kind of record review, doesn't it? But it's 40 years since the first time I made an album, which I remember buying at the time, and it came out on the same day as British Steel, apparently. And that has just been remastered. There's no add-ons and rarities with that. Yeah. And of course, the big one that I am looking forward to is it's actually not a reissue; it's a re-recording of the
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. The band.
The classic, the hugely influential Diamond Head's seminal debut, sometimes known as the White Album, more often known as Lightning to the Nations. It's been re-recorded with the current lineup of Diamond Head, which I think I'm okay with. I mean, I bought the original. Still got it somewhere in its original white sleeve, etc. So I think I'm okay with the re-recording. It means royalties to Sean Harris. I'm sure he's not concerned.
No.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But the icing on the cake, just before we go on to something else, Brian, I'll go over some reissues with you, is, and it's not 40 years, it's actually 41 years, but there's a new expanded version of Strangers in the Night, probably the greatest live album ever.
Oh, controversial.
We'll come on to, maybe not. But in my opinion, possibly the greatest live album ever. And there's an expanded version, which I think is 8 CDs, various concerts.
Seriously?
From that Obsession. Yeah.
Wow.
Various concerts from that Obsession tour of 1978, 77, 78. And I think it retails at something like 36 quid, which I think is great value.
That's brilliant value for
yeah.
Bearing in mind
also,
bearing in mind what I'm paying for a similar, probably similar type of package for the Thin Lizzy Rock Legends one. That's certainly not 35 quid.
So tell me about that Rock Legends thing. What's going on in that?
Well, before we move to Lizzy, I have to say, and you touched on it. You touched on it in terms of great live albums. I will give you that, and I often think that Strangers in the Night as a live album is often overlooked. I think when we look at all of the polls, and these are all great albums. Made in Japan, Purple always gets pulled out. Even Thin Lizzy's Live and Dangerous gets pulled out as I think there just seems to be a roll call of albums. Here's two I've never listened. One I've never listened to. You're probably Cheap Trick.
Yep.
I've never listened to it, but it always gets added. And Michael Schenker's group Live at Budokan. So everybody, and I do think there will be rock fans, and I think that era of UFO on that tour with Michael is it's a phenomenal. It is a phenomenal album, and to me, UFO with Schenker was great, and you touched on it. I know we focused at the earlier part of the show on a tribute to Eddie, but Pete Way and Paul Chapman. For me, I love the Headstone album, which is the compilation, and there's a Hammersmith show from 1983, which I think is the you'll probably help me out with which UFO tour it was. You might have seen it. Probably
83 would have been something like Making Contact, I think.
There's one. I'm trying to think of it. It's the Neil. I always remember the lineup. The lineup was always Andy Parker. I don't think Pete Way played live. This is when they had Paul Gray. Paul Gray was playing bass.
Right. Okay.
With Neil Carter on guitar before he went to Gary Moore, and then you had Paul Chapman and Phil Mogg. that is a live set. They open up with "We Belong to the Night."
Yeah.
It's a great. So UFO. Do you know what, Matt? I will be investing in Strangers in the Night because what a phenomenal album that is.
Yeah. It's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it, and of course, just in time for Christmas.
Just in time for Christmas, and for those of you who can't wait for Christmas, like me, I have pre-ordered the Rock Legends Thin Lizzy box set. 73, 74 unreleased tracks. I think with a band like Lizzy, there's a DVD in the box set as well too. It's got a documentary, Bad Reputation documentary. It'll be Lizzy. Loads of demos, which is great. I've collected a lot of the Lizzy stuff over the years. The Vagabonds box set, which was probably the last good collection of material, which had some of Phil's solo material in it and some of the Grand Slam stuff, which is a nice. If anybody was to think about, I want to get, a good collection of maybe 4 discs of Lizzy material, that I would say go to Vagabonds. But if you're a collector of Lizzy material and you want to get stuff, which has got Snowy White on it, stuff with Gary Moore and stuff with the classic lineup as well too. I'm looking forward to Rock Legends. Maybe actually what we do is I think it comes out 23rd of October, so it'll be out. Maybe next time we do a show, if we do one after, we'll do a little bit of a review in terms of the album. But
yeah, of course,
I can't wait.
I know you can't wait because I know I'm not sure you've ever mentioned this to anyone apart from me, but you are a big Thin Lizzy fan, of course.
I am. Sorry, no, go ahead.
I've got a feeling they might be your favourite band of all time. But I could be wrong.
Oh, don't put me under pressure there. There is a little band. There is a little band from Texas who aren't ZZ Top.
I know, but also 3-piece.
Yes.
Which maybe we'll park live albums for another day.
I think that would be good.
I think it's a discussion that could go on and on and on because I think everyone's got their. If you took 20 rock fans, you'd probably get 400 different albums. Maybe not that many. You know what I mean? You get all sorts of different permutations from, Made in Japan to Live in Japan to Unleashed in the East and so on. So maybe we'll discuss that on another day.
That would be good.
Apart from that, as I say, it's good times for reissues. The ACDC album is going to be good. I'm looking forward to that. A couple of things that I've heard lately, which I think are excellent. I heard a track today by the Ormond Betts band. Called Pale. I think it's called Pale Ghost Rider.
All right.
Just a fantastic song. You just hear songs occasionally, wherever you may be, and they just kind of, you just sort of prick up your ears. Well, Pale Horse Rider, not Pale Ghost Rider. Pale Horse Rider by the Ormond Betts band.
Yeah.
Which is obviously, the sons of the original kind of guys from the Ormond Brothers band and so on. So that was good. There's also, kind of in the same theme, the Brothers Osborne have got a new song out from, in fact, it's a title track from an album called Skeletons, which I like the sound of. But I think the best thing I've heard at the moment is, and you, I think, would appreciate this because it features one of our favourite guitarists, is Royalty by Joe Bonamassa.
Yes, now we're talking.
Which I think, I'm not sure it was written by, but certainly, or even if he's played on it, but certainly the album that it comes from, which is called Royalty, is that's Royalty as opposed to Royalty.
Yes.
Was co-written by one Bernie Marsden, Esquire, late of Buckinghamshire. I read his book last week, which I thought was quite entertaining. But I will come on to that. But I'm looking forward to that. I mean, the title track I've heard, and Bonamassa is Joe Bonamassa, of course, is hugely prolific.
Yes,
as we know, whether it's on his own or with Beth Hart or with Black Country Communion, and it all seems to be pretty good quality. He never really has. I mean, obviously, some may beg to differ, but whatever he's put out is pretty good.
I would agree.
And,
I have to say, Joe over the year, I think he's done. He must have done. He's done close, if not at least 20 studio. He's done 20 albums, and I think he there was a lot of product that he put out in the early days, and whether he was writing a lot on that. But I'm like you. I think the quality of the material that he's been putting out, and the co-writes, things like Drive, which was on his one of his last albums, Driving Towards the Daylight, is
he
is a songwriter, song. and he brings in some really good lyricists. Will Jennings has come in and has written some good lyrics. Who obviously Will Jennings has written with Stevie Winwood, so he's bringing in good caliber of writers. And he's always got Kevin Shirley in his back, backing him from a producer's perspective. And I look at Joe's band. He's now got Reese Winans playing Hammond on the keys. Anton Fig, who obviously was in David Letterman's house band for many, many years. He is just he surrounds himself with good people, very, very, very good musicians, and the quality of the product. I like you. I saw the Royalty box set, all nicely packaged. Will be all, and he's not saturating the market with here's a live album here and it's good quality. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And similarly with if you don't mind me saying. Another artist who, sadly, it'll be his last studio album is Fish. I wouldn't profess to be aficionado.
I see what you did there.
Yes, you see what I did there.
An aficionado, I love it.
Aficionado. But Fish's new album dropped a couple of weeks ago. Gardens of Remembrance, which was the lead-off single, which is brilliant. Recommend anybody who's free at 6:00 on a Friday night watch Fish on Friday. He'll be talking about music, gardening. He's so Fish, and you mentioned it earlier about bands putting albums back to coincide with tours. It's a real shame that Fish today on his website had just announced that his next tour, which I think he had scheduled. First quarter of next year has all been sort of cancelled, and we're looking to the back end of the year, and it's just a real shame for artists who are putting product out and doing it the old school way, put your product out and tour it. To do that, we're just not able to do that now these days, which is a real shame.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. As I say, I did read, but I listened to it as an audio book, I must confess. Bernie Marsden's Where's My Guitar book last week. Yeah. Which I recommend, actually. If you haven't read it, it's pretty good.
I love it.
It's quite,
I love it.
It's well written. It's he's met lots of people. I mean, there is a kind of a thread running through it, let's say, but it's a good read. I quite enjoyed it. And the audiobook comes with a bonus interview that he did with B.B. King back in 1978 backstage at Hammersmith Odeon, which is pretty good. As well. So all in all, I was very impressed. While we're on the subject of Bernie Marsden.
Well, exactly. And it'll be interesting because obviously, is it? I'm trying to think of the lead-off track. Is it Tea with Alice? Is a lead-off track off Joe's? That's certainly the one on social media.
A Conversation with Alice.
Conversation with Alice. Thank you. Conversation with Alice. Yeah. But that's a great lead-off track, and it'll be interesting. You and me as old school vinyl people will be desperate to get our hold of the album to see what the credits are like, to see which songs did Bernie write on and what did he play, and actually how many did he bring out the Beast and play the Les Paul on track 4 or whatever. Sadly, Just while we're talking about new releases, if you don't mind me, again on a slight Thin Lizzy thread, talking about some new material, as you mentioned about the Allman Betts band, Damon Johnson, who was in Thin Lizzy, and I suppose is still in Thin Lizzy whenever they get back together to do some stuff.
Yeah.
But Damon's got a new album coming out soon, and his new project is called Damon Johnson and the Get Ready, and they have just dropped, they've released a single called Battle Lessons. Very, very good. Very, has a lot of Lizzy references to it, but Damon's a great singer, and that's another track that people should have a listen to on their preferred music provider.
Indeed. I actually met Damon Johnson, as you know, at a meet and greet, and I asked him for his pick for you.
Yes.
But he'd already given it to a small child, which I think was quite nice, because they did a little kind of an acoustic. This is Black Star Riders, and it was at Shepherd's Bush Empire, about 6 or 7 years ago now. And I went up to him, a nice guy, and said, "Can I have your pick, please?" And he said, "No, I've already given it to the kid," which I thought was nice. And he only had one, which I thought was a bit of an oversight. But that's my Damon Johnson story. Nice guy.
No, yeah, very nice guy. Very, lovely guy. He
you've met Bernie Marsden though, of course, haven't you?
I've met Bernie, and I've met they both have something in common, actually. Both Bernie and Damon have signed the back of one of my Les Pauls.
I thought that might be the case.
Yes. Yeah. And Bernie, yes. So I've got a number of guitarists, all of the members of Thin Lizzy who were alive around 2011 have signed it. Vivian Campbell has signed it.
Lovely.
Ex Whitesnake. Bernie has signed it, and Damon Johnson signed it. And Damon's actually played it as well too. And really nice guy. And I christened the name of that Les Paul Lizzy. Because I'm that imaginative.
How appropriate. I thought for a minute you were going to say Vivian Campbell, ex-Def Leppard. I thought, do you know something I don't know? He is ex lots of people, isn't he, really?
I have to say, with the lockdown piece at the moment, I sat last night, and it's funny, with the likes of Netflix and Sky Arts and the things you can get on demand. I downloaded yesterday evening classic albums, and yet again watched the classic albums Hysteria. And
it's a cracker, isn't it?
It is, and it's one of those things where when we were talking about ACDC earlier, and as we talk with all of our friends, and you kind of go, okay, name me the best rock album ever. And I'm not going to, in terms of, if I was to say to you now, off the cuff, what would you say the best rock album of all time is?
Easy. It's Back in Black. It's the perfect rock album.
It is, and I knew when I was thinking about us doing the show, I thought we're going to talk about we'll talk about 1980. We will talk about we'll talk about the new album. We'll talk about Back in Black somewhere. And I know if I ask Matt and go, what is the best rock album of all time? Matt will probably go Back in Black. I will go, I'm kind of with you there, but there's a little gremlin in the back of my head going, Brian, 1987. It's Hysteria. Hysteria. It is the greatest hits album, and you kind of go. I'm just there's this little bit of me that's going, I want to say Hysteria.
Then say it. I mean, it is a great album, isn't it? And I think on that classic albums thing, I forget who said it now, but they did set out. I'm not sure they set out to do it, but essentially, Hysteria became a greatest hits album. In one piece, and even the songs that weren't hits
Yeah.
You know, songs like Love and Affection and
Yeah.
Run Riot and, you know, it is. I know what you mean. It's up there, isn't it?
Exactly.
As a complete piece of work.
And I often, and for me, I think it's where you were. You know, in 1980, I was 10 years old, and I would be lying to you if in 1980, I certainly was not listening to ACDC's Back in Black. That was not on my turntable, and I can probably remember what was on my turntable, and it certainly wasn't. It wasn't Back in Black. So for me, when everybody talks about what is the best year of rock, a lot of people will turn to 1980 and say that's the year of rock. Well, I was 10 years old. My year of rock is probably 1987, because I'm probably looking at, I'm think of the albums that are around at that time. You know, you're in the cycle of Hysteria. I bought Animal as a single. I bought the album. I even bought the box sets. So to me, Hysteria is a big album for me. But then 1987 from Whitesnake, we talked about Bernie. You know, to me, the era of Bernie, like Slide It In is my favorite Whitesnake album, always will be. But 1987 and MTV, Tawny Kitten, Vivian, Adrian Vandenberg, Still of the Night, and you're kind of going, there's 1987, Appetite for Destruction, still kicking about, Slippery. You're in that period of wow.
And as you say, you can't knock bands for trying to make money in some way, shape, or form, whether it's reissues or looking back down the side of the sofa for archive stuff or lost tracks or whatever it might be.
Yeah, the bit I take an issue with is, and I'm a sucker for this as well too. What I like about buying, if you look at something like the Thin Lizzy box set, there's 70 plus unreleased tracks. What I take umbrage at these days, when I'm on my third greatest hits album of a particular artist, and the only reason I'm buying it is because I only want 2 or 3 tracks. That's the bit I struggle with, and one of my we talked about, say, Whitesnake, for example. I have no idea. I think Whitesnake are putting out a trilogy. It's like a red, white, and blue trilogy at the moment, where they're they've been remixing, and some of the some of the band, Joel Hoekstra, great guitar player. Joel's been tracking over some of the 87, some of the later material that they've got, and they've remixed it, and it's kind of like going, so you're playing material at the later stages of Whitesnake. It's being remixed. They're adding on new guitars. There's no new vocals. It's not a behind the sofa. It's just basically a remix, and maybe somebody doubling over Steve Vai's tracks. And I'm kind of going, why?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
That's
a fine line
into slightly. Yes, exactly. And I think that probably, if you're a completist, and we are with different bands.
Yeah.
And if you're a Whitesnake completist, then you probably just have that for breakfast. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. It's just one of those things, isn't it?
It is.
Bands have always done it. Always done. As you say, reissued, remastered, this, that, and the other. And why not? While we're on the subject of Thin Lizzy, so one of the features that we're going to do, as you know, because you decided we were going to do it, it's a good idea, is a quiz.
Excellent.
Not because we're both owners of. I think we're both owners of Planet Rock Anoraks, aren't we, Bri?
Are you? If you're going to talk about what the prize is for winning the quiz in the series, if you're thinking about one of us has to maybe burn one of their anoraks, that's not fair, because you've got 5 and I've only got the 1. But if
No, I've got 3. I've only got 3, which I don't know where they are actually. I mean, it's just lost somewhere. Who knows?
well, exactly. As you know, during lockdown, to keep myself busy, I've been doing some recording, recording some material, and
very good it is too.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Everybody can go to our YouTube channel, the Albert Mann Trio, check out all the stuff that we've done. But anyway, one of the drummer, a good pal of ours, Mark, massive Toto fan, bigger Toto fan than me, great drummer. Mark and I were having a conversation last night, and Mark's actually reading a book about Jeff Porcaro at the moment.
Oh, really?
You will not guess. I'll give you this will be. It's a shame you're not a Toto fan, because this is.
But I do like a bit of Toto.
Do you?
I mean,
Okay.
who doesn't? Yeah.
So, a British light entertainment singer was muted to be the original lead vocalist in Toto. Would you like to guess who that said light entertainment, English light entertainment singer was? A bit of a singing song and dance man. It fried my noodle last night, Matt. I will never listen to Hold the Line ever again in the thought that this man could have been singing this song. And this is, if my mate Mark is telling me the truth, he would you have to have a guess. You have to have a guess.
I'm going to have a guess. Of course, the if you like, the classic song and dance man. The probably the most probably the most well known that Britain has ever produced is Sir Bruce Forsyth.
No. Yeah. You're. Come on. Can you see?
Well, you did say it was left field.
Okay. Fair enough. I set it up that way.
You did.
I set it up that way.
I have no.
Can you
I
see
have no clue.
Leo Sayer?
Oh my goodness. I mean, he had the hair.
No, you've completely blown my noodle now, because now I'm going to be thinking of Bruce Forsyth singing Hold the Line. But supposedly, from what Mark had said, is when they were putting Toto together as a band.
Yeah.
Before Bobby Kimball was in it, Leo Sayer was one of the singers, and he may have rehearsed with the band as well too.
Wow.
There you go.
You know, I mean, that's not as far-fetched as you might. Certainly not as far-fetched as Bruce Forsyth. Brucey joining Toto, of course. I mean, Leo Sayer was, a decent singer back in the day, mid-70s, and I guess timing-wise, it could have worked. I mean, there's stranger things have happened. But yeah, thanks for bringing that back, and also that little nugget about Leo Sayer. But in a way, it's no different from Nasty Nick from EastEnders. John.
What did he do?
I forget. He sang. He was briefly the singer about 10 years ago. The singer of the Heavy Metal Kids, wasn't he? John Altman, I think his name is. He was so Nasty Nick Nick Cotton from EastEnders was the singer of the Heavy Metal Kids. So strange things happen. There's a crossover between show business and
was the original guy in the Heavy Metal Kids.
Yeah, Gary Holton. He
was in Alvida's in Pet.
He was, a really good singer. In fact, there's a clip of Heavy Metal Kids on Old Grey Whistle Test, and have a listen to it and tell me who you think he sounded like as a singer.
Will do.
And then you'll know why he why he allegedly auditioned for a very successful late 80s late 70s, early 80s band who lost their singer. Anyway, just check it out.
I will do it. We'll check it out.
Gary Holton and the Heavy Metal Kids. Basically, he auditioned, I believe, to be Bon Scott's replacement in ACDC, but I could be wrong on that. There's all sorts of names always mentioned in that context, isn't there?
And do you know what? We could do an entire show about AC/DC because I always find it really interesting when you talk about the album Back in Black and how I'd really love to know how much, you know, that fabled story of how much of it had been recorded and how much of the lyrical content was from Bon, because it's really, you know, I take nothing away from Brian Johnson's credited in the material and all that kind of good stuff, but it's just interesting when you look at that seminal album and you look, you know, to me, when you look at Back in Black lyrically, it's just so smart and sharp, and Bon's lyrics are very, and then you move to the back end of their career and we're back to Play Ball, Rock or Bust, or Shot in the Dark, you know, and maybe that's just how people end up writing, but it just was never as razor sharp as with Bon, and that kind of little twinkle in the eye, the way in which Bon wrote, you know, to me, how would when we, you know, something we'll do, we'll maybe do it in another show, which is kind of pick one of two, where I'll just throw you some
Roth or Hagar, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think we need to bring this evening's show to a close. Our first podcast, as Brian Johnson once said, I think it's time for us to pick up our balls, load up our cannons for a 21 gun salute. Thanks,
Matt.
Matt.
Words. Yes, thanks, Brian. See you next time. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Rock on.